What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on what if Deku was transported to Danmachi Part 9. Now, before we jump into this, let's do some shoutouts. Thank you to Fearless, Falcon Blades, Keen of Ayaya, Joe Benson, yeah, sure, 12089, sorry bro, I didn't know how to pronounce that, Shanna, Floodmite22, June 19th, Gecko, Predator 092, Omnigod, Depressed Boy LJ, Hunter XD, EXE, for all y'all joining. Thank you all. If you guys want to, go down into Discord down below and go ahead and join the Discord. You know, we're all fun, we're nice people most of the time, and I chat with you guys and hang out. So if you guys think that would be a fun thing, go check it out down in the description down below. And let's jump straight into this what if. Where we left off, Izuku woke up the next morning. After seeing eyes in her outfit, Izuku thought she looked very beautiful. Way more than Izuku could even lament. Sorry about that, guys. That is on my bad. Someone had decided to turn on something in the background. And the person knows that I did not vote for him turning it on in the background. So I'm very sorry for that. Back to what I was saying though. Izuku woke up the next morning and eventually went out. He knows Aiz wakes up very early in the morning and this time woke up slightly later, so she can mainly go with Izuku. Izuku and Aiz both left outside of the Loki familiar to try to go ahead and find out monsters in the dungeon and stuff and start training. They first picked up some breakfast, they picked up some crepes, a very generalized thing that Izuku and I slowly started to like eating after the first incident that, well, corresponded with crepes. Eventually, Izuku and Aiz and Deku both walked out of the store they were at. The store they were at was a place Aiz had gone to pretty frequently, mainly just because for the simple enough reason that Loki likes to go there after they won their expeditions. Izuku read the sign as House of Fertility and decided that this place sounded very immature for what it actually is there for. Eventually, Izuku and Aiz both ended up walking to the dungeon. They ended up going pretty deep inside the dungeon itself. They ended up farming monsters, and on their way out, they saw a similar white-haired boy that they had seen recently. Izuku instantaneously recognized the boy, and so did Aiz. It was the boy that she had, well, scared, even though Aiz knew that Izuku even stated that, while she hadn't really scared the boy, Aiz still feels kind of slightly, off-putted by the boy's, well, not fear of her, but general confused look on his face every time he saw her. Eventually, Izuku and I sat there and waited for the boy to wake up. He woke up and, shocked at Izuku and I's both being there, decided to roll away. Izuku looked at him and almost quoted on how he looked like an armadillo, rolling away on the ground, but decided against it, mainly for the simplest reason that if he said that, he felt like he would be kind of sort of rude and very, well, not nice with his statement. Eventually, Aiz and Izuku, after waiting for a minute, seeing the boy run away, decided that they should also head up out of the dungeon. Eventually, they left the dungeon. Izuku and Aiz split off. Izuku ended up getting lost somehow, which kind of was a shocker to him. Almost seemed like fate guided him into a different direction. He laughed about this. reminding himself that fate might be a thing in the world where gods exist. Eventually, Izuku found himself nearby this old, broken-down manor. And much to his surprise, he saw the white-haired boy walking out of it. Izuku walked up to the white-haired boy, where the boy got kind of shocked when he saw Izuku walking up to him. The boy raised up his hands in, surrenderance, trying to not offend Izuku, but Izuku said, "Hello, my name is Izuku Midoriya. What's your name?" The boy kind of shocked, seeing how Izuku was, not trying to attack him currently, was like, "I'm Cranel. Cranel. I can't pronounce his last name for the life of me. Izuku's like, "Hello, I was wondering if me and my friend scared you earlier today." "Scared me? Oh, no. See, I was running away from you for a different reason." "A different reason?" "See, I'm not scared of you. It's more of like, I'm embarrassed to talk to you." Which, kind of confused Izuku, of course, because, he never had someone to be embarrassed to talk to him. Belle ended up stating that, "Well, you see, you were the one who saved my life, you and Miss Eyes." "Oh, okay. Yes, so I get embarrassed and slightly shocked every time I see you guys." "Oh. Well, you could have just said anything." And then Belle ended up stating that he was very grateful for Izuku and Eyes, saving his life. Which Deku passed off as, him being grateful. Izuku knew that this boy had the makings to be an excellent hero. He was very kind and generous and, to state without a lack of a better word, tended to be very and just in his actions. Eventually, Izuku ended up asking the boy, "Excuse me, Belle, would you like to train with me?" This confused Belle. He remembered how Izuku had easily been able to defeat the Minotaur, and decided, "Yes, I would like to train with you." Izuku smiled at this, being happy that he had made a new friend or a new training buddy, and then said, "Okay, tomorrow morning we'll wake up early. I'll see if I can bring over my friend Eyes as well. She will help us train." "Okay. Eyes, you mean..." "Yes, I mean that Eyes, the sword princess." Izuku was used to people being very kind of confused whenever he said Eyes' name in a casual manner, seeing how most people know her to be, kind of scary. She was a woman that almost any man would love to date, much less marry, and also that was very scary and who could easily defeat not them, but most people on the surface. Eventually, Izuku ended up going back to his base at the Twilight Mansion and found Eyes sitting in her room. Izuku knocked before entering. Eyes was delighted to see Izuku once more. This time she was in more of a simpler nightgown, seeing how it had gone pretty late in the evening. The nightgown she wore was a nice white with blue accents around some of the around the neck and arms. Izuku commented on how she looked beautiful in her outfit, which caused Eyes to slightly smile at Izuku's statement. Eventually, Izuku explained that he met the kid with white hair. "Oh, what was his name?" Eyes asked. He said that his name was Cranel, and that Izuku offered to train him. "Oh, really?" "Yes." And he was wondering if Eyes would like to if she would like to help him train Belle too. Eyes agreed to this without a second thought, mainly because she wanted to spend more time with Izuku, and also seeing how she also didn't really know this Belle character, but wanted to make up for scaring him, or feeling like she scared him, decided that she would help Izuku. The next morning came where Aizen and Deku were both standing on top of the wall. Eventually, Bell ended up rounding the corner. He greeted Aizen and Izuku. Izuku then ended up saying, "Bell, I'm a level 2 adventurer." "You're level 2? "Yes, I'm only a level 2. "But you were able to so easily decimate that Minotaur." "Well, you see, I can offer that to my innates." "Your innates?" "Yes, my skills I was born with." Even though Izuku knew his skills he wasn't really born with, he still decided to state that the skills themselves were innates. Eventually, Izuku ended up stating that Bell, based off of hearing his stats, was relatively weak. He also learned that Bell had learned magic, a fire-type magic, which Izuku heard as Firebolt, and decided if Bell had learned magic, he could develop his magic parameter with Bell. Izuku had already been practicing his magic solo, and ended up developing a slight teleportation spell, which he was able to, after chanting it so many times, get the development skill Mage, as well as the skill Silent Quick Chants. This allowed Izuku to chant any spell he wanted, if he used it enough, in a very quick manner, allowing him to instantaneously use certain spells. For example, one spell he had been working in private on was his teleportation spell. Izuku had accessed the teleportation spell after he had remembered the god's name Deus Ex Machina. So after using it enough, he was able to use the spell on his own volition whenever he so chooses so. Eventually, Izuku started to prepare to fight against Bell. Bell went to attack Izuku, but Izuku silently said teleport, and Bell saw Izuku's mouth move. Confusingly, he looked around to see Izuku be right behind him. This caused Bell to try to attack Izuku once again. Izuku quickly moved out of the way, this time using One for All instead of his actual, teleportation spell. Izuku knew he can only use his teleportation spell about around 5 to 6 times. The main reason for it was, when he used teleportation, he literally created an collapsed area of space, causing 2 points to be overlapped with each other, allowing him to quickly travel. In other words, he made an invisible wormhole. And for this, he also had to create a black hole as well. So teleportation was the action of folding space while also creating a black hole to maintain the gravitational structure of the space. This is big word stuff where he made a stabilized wormhole. Eventually, Izuku ended up constantly attacking and fighting Bell. He only used about around 3% of One for All, because that's about around where Bell was at. But eventually, Izuku had to slowly start increasing his strength. Ice was watching from the background and was very interested in the teleportation ability she had saw Izuku using, and figured she would ask Izuku at a later point in time. Eventually, Bell kept trying to fight while Izuku kept dodging his attacks with little to no resistance. Eventually, Bell almost got a direct hit on Izuku, but Izuku ended up using 10% to quickly dodge, especially seeing how Bell was using a sharp knife, while Izuku was only using, his bare hands. He still hadn't gone back to Hephaestus to pick up his weaponry. Eventually, Izuku ended up... Eventually, Izuku ended up teaching Bell hand-to-hand combat, teaching him how to increase his base skills without actually having to, increase his base skills. Eventually, Bell was able to slowly start to be able to fight on par with Izuku at 3%, so much so that Izuku had to use his teleport skill 2 more times. Izuku knew that his zero down would happen if he used it 1 more time, so decided to use more One for All to supplement that theme. Izuku was wondering if he could channel One for All into his magic itself, Maybe channeling One for All into his magic might make it stronger, or might decrease the cost on his mana. Izuku decided that he would attempt this later on with a bigger spell that he was working on. A spell that would be much more devastating if he could use it right, but also very peaceful if he could use it right as well. Or a lot less torturous, Izuku decided to state it as. Eventually, Izuku ended up chilling. He looked around to some locations after he had finished fighting with Bell. Aiz had decided to try to pick a fight with Izuku, and lightly tried to fight Izuku. Of course, Aiz not really wanting to injure Izuku, seeing how she had emotionally, become invested into Izuku, decided not to try to harm him massively, and only occasionally actually started to go stronger whenever she noticed Izuku was slightly increasing his own strength against her. Eventually, Aiz had understood that her and Izuku, when Izuku had gone full out, were about around the same level. She wasn't upset on this. On the contrary, she was actually very excited by this. Knowing that Izuku and her were close in strength, they could grow even stronger together, rather than Izuku just becoming miles above her. And this meant that she always had a goal to work towards, rather than just defeating the Black Dragon. Eventually, after they both fought, Izuku ended up going back to his house with Aiz, after leaving Bell there. Eventually, Izuku ended up waking up the next morning. He learned about an event that was going on called the Monster Freya, but decided against doing anything with it currently. Aiz said that she had to go help protect Loki during the event, so she really couldn't actually hang out with Izuku, much to Izuku's dismay. Izuku also decided to go check up on Hephaestus, seeing how he hadn't really heard any information about her about the gauntlets he asked to be developed. Eventually, Izuku ended up entering Hephaestus' area, and saw another goddess sitting there and Hephaestus working on something. She said, "Oh, Izuku, I wasn't expecting you." Izuku said, "Oh yeah, I was coming to go check up if you had finished the items I requested." Hephaestus, remembering the items, almost scoffed at herself, realizing that she had kind of put him on the back burner. Izuku asked who the second lady was who was helping her out. Hephaestus ended up explaining that this was a leech that had come back to bite her after she had left her. Deku was very confused about what she was talking about, but eventually the girl who had been categorized as a leech sent up, "That's not a nice way to treat me, Hephaestus." Izuku looked over toward the girl who had made the sudden outburst and looked like she was pouting. She seemed to be pretty small, with a a white dress with blue accents on it, which Izuku thought looked pretty decent. Not as well as Aiz looked, but definitely well enough, and helped to accentuate her figure. Eventually, she ended up explaining who she was. She said that she was the goddess Hestia. Izuku was thinking about where he had heard the name Hestia before, and remembered that Bell had stated her goddess was Hestia. And Izuku's like, "Oh, you're Bell's goddess." This kind of confused Hestia, because she wouldn't see why this random boy knew who Bell was. She ended up asking, "Did you know who Bell is?" "Yes, hello, I'm Izuku Midori. I'm from the Loki familiar. I saved Bell from a Minotaur one time, and now currently I'm helping him train. I came here today because I had asked Hephaestus to forge me weaponry, and in return, I had given her some schematics from weapons from my country that would help, hopefully, forward adventurers and make them stronger." "Huh. Yeah. I figured it would be pretty cool." And Hephaestus then ended up stating, "Oh yeah, that weapon you gave me, the weapon blueprints. Yes, I made a prototype of it. It's over there on the table." Izuku ended up walking over to the table and saw what looked to be a simple revolver from his regular world. No one had kind of used these weapons for a while, and the main people who used them were mainly personnel that were trying to act like cowboys, but Izuku knew that the thing itself looked pretty well done. He could easily see that mostly the things about it looked excellent. And Izuku, congratulated Hephaestus on her excellent work. He said it looked very well done. Hephaestus smiled, saying, "Well, I am an excellent master blacksmith. Then again, crafting something with a barrel was a little bit of a different trouble." Izuku ended up almost laughing at Hephaestus' statement. He then looked at the bullets next to it and looked at it and saw tiny engravings. Izuku asked what they were, and Hephaestus stated, "Well, you see, I had put enchants onto that. Just like how you asked when you asked for a growth, gauntlets, and boots to help grow along with you. This weapon here has enchants as well. Whenever the user channels magic into it, it will make the bullet explode on contact or make it do something else." Izuku thought this was, kind of amazing. And Hestia, hearing this, was kind of shocked. This boy had thought of the same exact idea she had thought of. And she eventually was like, "Wait, you gave it to him for free?" And Hephaestus had stated, "No, I didn't give it to him for free. He actually paid me with designs for the weapon he is currently holding. Something that never existed in our world before, prior before Izuku had introduced it to me." "What do you mean never existed in the world before? He said he got it from his country." "Hestia, listen, I'm the goddess of forging. And yes, I've been around for around 100, 200 years. But I still should be able to know any major developments. And an item like this is insane. Infinitely better than a bow. Don't get me wrong, the materials are much more expendable and you really can't regain it and it's louder. But if anyone was able to monopolize on this, it itself would be a very dangerous situation." Izuku thought about it and asked, "Excuse me, Hephaestus, could you add on a revolver to this as well? To the gear you want?" "Yeah. Why do you choose a revolver?" "Well, you see, I was thinking about it and I was like, Hephaestus isn't wrong. The base aspect of a revolver was, very useful. It's a well-ranged weapon that could do multiple things." Hephaestus said, "Okay, it's going to cost you some other designs." And some other designs, Izuku's like, "Well, how about I draw this?" Izuku ended up drawing up a very rudimentary looking musket. It was a very simple one, but he drew it up to show everything else and everything about it. He explained that a musket is an older version of a revolver, sort of, which confused Hephaestus more. Why did he draw a musket then? Izuku explained that a musket was known as a rifle, while a revolver was known as a pistol. These two were guns, but the difference is as much as a katana and a claymore, which, to put in perspective, are two totally different swords that serve two totally different purposes. Hephaestus understood that both of these weapons, even though one is a downgrade to the other, kind of seemed to hold something to it. Izuku then explained that these weapons ended up doing something totally different, and that revolvers tend to specialize in, being revolvers. Smaller range scale, but tends to pack a punch at a closer range. While a rifle tends to be longer range and used for more stealth-based at longer ranges. Eventually, Hephaestus agreed and understood what Izuku was getting at. He was getting at that guns were much more than just the simple revolver she had seen. which did kind of shock her. Well, not really too much, but did shock her enough to where she realized that she should probably take this revolver thing more seriously rather than just a nice, neat little side project. She already understood that revolvers were kind of a dangerous weapon, especially if Izuku's words hold true and a revolver can do way more, and this musket can do more. And Izuku said there were even more different variations of weapons, but those other variations he really doesn't know how to actually remake in an accurate manner. Even though Izuku knew the basics of each ammunition, he still really didn't know it as well. Eventually, Hephaestus finished working on the dagger and once again apologized to Izuku for not preparing either of the items he requested. Izuku said it was no issue and also added to make sure she also did the revolver, which Hephaestus agreed to. She was really willing to make it free of charge for not only forgetting Izuku's original request, but also not doing it at all. Eventually, Izuku disagreed about that. And before anything else could happen, he heard explosions outside. He looked outside to see a monster running around and decided that this was a serious issue. He jumped out of the window in Hephaestus' workshop and quickly dispatched of the monster. He looked around, he heard Aiz and Loki would be out today, and knew that his goddess, and also Aiz, the person he cared about, was in danger. Well, Aiz really wasn't in danger, but Loki was in danger, which Izuku decided was an issue. So he decided to quickly look around to see if he can see any information about it. Eventually, he couldn't find any, and eventually heard that Aiz was killing monsters very quickly, so Izuku decided to take part of the monster killing as well. Even though he still wasn't the most excited about the premonition of killing monsters, he still understood that it was kind of important to do the action he was doing, especially if he wants to save people. Izuku ended up quickly fighting and murdering multiple monsters. Eventually, he met up with Aiz and stuff and heard that there was one monster that was still not around. Izuku ended up looking to see if he could find anything at all, but couldn't find anything. Eventually, he saw the goddess Hestia sitting there, which Izuku had just recently gotten himself acquainted with, and asked Hestia what's going on. Hestia explained that Bell was currently trying to fight against the monkey, which Deku instantaneously freaked out at, and quickly handed Izuku the knife, which Izuku was confused about. Hestia knew that this knife was made for Bell. Izuku knew that this knife was made for Bell, so it made no sense. Eventually, Hestia ended up stating that she wanted Izuku to take it to Bell, which Izuku did. Eventually, he quickly rounded around the corner and saw Bell standing there. Izuku ended up quickly throwing the knife to Bell, which Bell caught. Almost a pure stroke of luck, Izuku thought, because that boy was not paying attention to where he threw the knife at all. Eventually, Bell quickly took care of the monster, and Izuku congratulated him. He saw Aiz and Loki in the background, and ended up walking towards them. Loki said, "So when did you know the cow goddess?" Which confused Izuku, and then Loki sighed and said, "Hestia." Izuku said, "Oh, he got to know her when he went to Hephaestus to check on his items and stuff. So are those done, kid?" "No, Hephaestus forgot all about it because she was doing something I had given her in return." "What do you mean? Didn't you just pay for it regularly?" "Oh yeah, I guess I should explain. I'd shown Hephaestus a new type of weapon, and in return she said that she would craft my stuff for free as long as I show her a new weapon type every single time." Loki thought, "Wow, that's pretty sick," and then also thought, "Wait a minute, you know a new type of weapon?" "Yes, a weapon that the goddess of forging hadn't seen before." Yes, I know it sounds unbelievable. Unbelievable, kid. It sounds impossible. Don't get the two words mixed up. Yes, Loki-sama. I just kind of, understood where Loki-sama was coming from, but also knew that Deku was, well, not a normal person. His skill set alone makes him way more, well, better than most people. And knew that he could easily be able to hold his own against most higher-leveled personnel. Eventually, Izuku and Aiz and Loki all ended up heading back to the base. And all ended up chilling and sleeping. Izuku ended up finding some other stuff, which not really upsetted him, but he understood everything that was going on. He was kind of slightly annoyed that Hephaestus had just, totally skipped out on the entire, contract process, but Izuku understood that there was a reasoning for everything she chose to do, and also knew that he couldn't really control a goddess's actions. That's the goddess's job to manage, and if she can't manage that, then Izuku can't really fault her for it. Izuku then decided that he needed to quickly end up going to sleep, and Izuku drifted off to sleep once again. And that's where I'm going to leave it off, guys. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. Until next time, goodbye.